Today we have the privilege and pleasure and good fortune to be able to sit down and chat with a gentleman who has been instrumental in the evolution of curling in Penetanguishene. To that I say I welcome Mr. John Desroches. John, your involvement in curling goes from being as a curler, as well as an organizer, an elected director, past president of the Penetanguishene Curling Club, but more importantly, a longtime supporter and advocate of this great sport. I'm certain that your historical knowledge of curling is unmatched in this community, and with your insights, we'd like to have you share your experience with us. Firstly, John, if you could tell me just how long have you been involved in curling, from when to when?
Well, my curling started with my dad, actually at the old Penetanguishene Curling Club at the Mental Health Center. In those days, the 2 sheets of ice at the curling club had a oval around the 2 sheets of curling ice, which allowed you to skate. So my dad, while he was curling, would take me up to skate, and I would just watch an end, then skate, watch another end, then skate. And before you know it, my dad was asking me if I wanted to throw a rock. So I guess I was about between 10 and 14, somewhere's in there, that I started throwing rocks. And then shortly after that, started curling.
And you went to how long, roughly?
Well, I gave up curling, about 15 years ago. My knees were gone, so there was just no more curling for me.
I see. It goes without saying, obviously, that your father was probably your greatest influence. Was there anybody else that had an influence on your curling?
Oh yes, yes. Many curlers. Jumbo Jumbo was a tough curler, tough to curl for, and a little mean at times. But he demanded a lot from you, even though he always curled lead. He still demanded a lot from you because he always curled for my dad. And once I started curling for my dad, I played second stone, and Jumbo would play first, even though he had been curling for many, many years. But he used to always say, if there isn't any blood in your gloves, you're not sweeping hard enough. And in those days, you used brooms, and it was a little tougher than it is today.
Being aware that you curled at the Mental Health Center, the first locale of curling really in Penetanguishene as an organized club, could you describe the facilities that were there in the early years? The building, a lounge or a change room, was it on 1 floor, 2 floors?
Well, that facility itself had a lounge, but it wasn't used because it was a mental health center, a hospital. Booze wasn't allowed on the property, and so it was just left stagnant, and it was used as a storage room. And the curlers just used the change room where the skaters changed their skates, and you come pretty well prepared anyways before the game started. The games always started on time because you had to get there early to pick up your rocks. Rocks were misshapes, different sizes, different shapes. They were unusual, but they were paired. And you would go get to the curling rink early, pick your rocks out of the pigeonholes, put them on the ice, and put a tag on them. And that was for your team color. And that was an interesting part of it. The lounge itself was just an old wood stove in there with which you had to use with the curlers, the skaters rather, and it was a good deal. The dues in those days were $1 a year, and that dollar went to the Ontario Curling Association because it was on the grounds. It was all the on that facility was covered by the hospital. The ice was great.
Brooms at that time?
Oh, the brooms are a little bit different today than when they were there. And if you were to describe one, I would say they would look almost like a house broom, but only it was not trimmed at the bottom. That square trim that you have on a house broom, the corn was left long, and you would find a lot of broken corn on the ice. That was one of the problems. But once the broom was used for a while, it was pretty good. But they're quite wide and very hard to swing. It's really tough to use. And then slowly the blackjack came in. And after the blackjack, many other innovations, such as nylon brooms, and then the brush came in.
Right. Back in those days, who were some of the curlers who stood out in those early years? And if you could elaborate on their careers, maybe.
Well, one of the curlers that was well known in that area in that time was George Robinson, and he curled all over Ontario. He was manager of the Georgian Bay Hotel, which gave him a lot of time during the winter because the hotel closed up, and he just curled all winter, nothing else. And he made his mark. My dad actually curled for him. That's what my dad started curling for George. And after that, I guess my dad would be one of the most well-known curlers. They had quite a team with my dad, and there was Jumbo Dibbo, Isaac Pilon, and Vic Morrow. And they won a lot of trophies, and they did a lot of curling. In fact, Dad used to take 1 or 2 weeks of his holidays just for curling, going to bonspiels. And it was very serious and quite interesting. And having listened to these old guys, it was quite interesting. If they curled in Ellenvale, they would have to go by train at times. And they would take their own rocks, load them on the train here in Penetanguishene, go to Ellenvale, stay overnight, come back 2 days later. That was these were stories that Jumbo Dibbo was telling me.
Interesting. So you moved from the mental health center to the Penetanguishene arena here. When did that take place, and why did it take place, I guess? You mind if I have a look at the... Sure, go ahead.
Just for dates. The Penetanguishene arena, we moved here in 1957-58 because the arena at the mental health center was condemned. That's the reason why it closed. It was a tough building. It was huge beams, and to this day I can't see why it was closed. It just didn't look that bad.
That's very interesting. So when you came to the Penetanguishene Curling Club at the arena here, there were differences.
Oh, there was. But, you have to remember, the Penetanguishene Curling Club was a huge sponsor of this arena, money-wise. People don't realize that, and it's not recorded anywhere. We did donate as much as the Legion did, if not more. We had $18,000 at the time, and we donated all of that to the curling club. Then Orville Amble, who was spearheaded the drives to build this arena, simply because Orville wanted to curl, but he was a member of the Legion as well, and he was working for both. But he and Vic Gregg and Doug Rogers, they all worked at the liquor store, and they were just begging for money, steady, and they were coming up with all kinds of money for the arena. Ray Belil was the secretary, and Ray would be taking money up to the bank daily for the arena, and it was quite interesting. And slowly everything came together.
Right. So the facilities here as compared to at the mental health center.
Oh, it was the ice at the mental health center was A1. The pebbles were different then. They were called a waffle pebble, which is poured on rather than sprayed on. And when we got here, of course, the ice was used for skating as well as curling. And you can imagine, in those days, for some reason, there were a lot of skaters out there, and skating around in circles in the arena would create indentations on all corners. So when you threw your rock, you didn't know where it was going to go. And maybe once or twice a year they would not shave the ice, but they had a machine that reduced the ice. It was a grinder or some kind. It took the ice down, and the ice makers would fill it up again. And for 3 or 4 weeks, the ice was not bad. And then before you know it, it was back to the old ruts. And it worked out fine. No, you had to play the ice.
You mentioned the ice makers. Who were those people that looked after the ice, and how did they do it?
Jerome Cannell was the first one, and I believe it was Jerome Butzineau was the second one, and they were both excellent. They did a whale of a job because they had to get ice ready on Sunday night for curling Monday, and then they would work all Monday morning and have the ice ready for Monday afternoon. And then on Tuesday night, they would again turn around and get the ice ready for hockey and skating. And I thought they did a whale of a job.
And back then, who were, in those years when you first came here, who were the big curlers, the prominent curlers?
In this arena?
In this arena?
Well, I think we had a pretty hot team. And we did quite well over the years. And I had a team of Al McClinton, Mike Bury, and Larry Merkley, and we did quite well. And then they started coming on, like a team like yourself, my brother Fred, Waxy Gregoire, yourself, and Dennis O'Leary.
O'Leary, yes.
So, there were some good teams. There was a good competition. When we moved from this club to the new club, the competition got pretty hot, and it was good.
One of the pieces of equipment that kind of filtered into curling over the years, and you probably know a little bit more about this than anybody, being a shoe designer by trade.
Oh, yeah.
The slider.
Well, I had the advantage of that because when we first started sliding here, I started sliding at the Mental Health Center. It was just coming into being. When I first started curling, you could slide to the tee, no further. You had to release the rock before the tee. And with a lot of opposition from the old curlers, they used to hate it when they'd see a slide out of the hack. And then gradually, even before it went to the hog, they had a full-length slide, but it didn't last very long. It only lasted about 2 or 3 months because people were sliding the length of the ice and was depositing the rocks at the other end off their hand, which was not not very exciting. So it changed to the hog, and then we started experimenting with different kinds of shoes. And I had an advantage because I was a shoe designer, and I had an advantage of doing experimental shoes. So with my team, we had, I don't know how many different pairs of shoes with different kinds of sliders on them. And when I started sliding, I think I was one of the first in Dr. Small in Midland. We were the first two around here to start sliding. Dr. Small used a leather sole shoe where he used to take off the toe rubber. And he did quite well at it. And leather was pretty good. But then we started going with cork and rubber and plastic, and there was no Teflon in those days. And we played with all kinds of stuff. It did not too badly, but the problem with the plastic, it would deteriorate and break in the cold weather. And then cork and rubber was pretty decent, but it would start cracking. Then the Teflon came in, and it was a miracle piece of material that was invaluable. And even then, you started dealing with sliding on your toe or full-length sliders, and eventually the full-length slider caught on, the flat foot slide.
Right. So we moved from the Penetang Curling Club here at the arena to the current location on Water Street. When did that take place?
Okay, we moved from this facility to the Penetanguishene Curling Club in 1973. We were starting to move stuff in the fall of 1972, but the ice wasn't ready until January or February of 1973. And that's about the time we moved down there.
John, when you moved to the Water Street locale, there were some key figures involved in that transfer and in that whole deal. Who were some of those people?
Well, there were a number of people, and I think I'm going to have to just refer to my notes here for a minute because,
Sure, please do.
I was president at the time, and Ozzie Santamon was the building chairman. Vince Morrow was second vice, and he was very instrumental as well as getting a deal with the town. And then there was Ernie Lalone, Peter Sheriff, Wally Meisinger, Alvin Grupp. Alvin Grupp was if I go back, a few years before we started building the club, came to me and asked me if I would be president of the club. They couldn't find anybody who wanted to be president. So I don't know why I said yes I would, but I did, and it was pretty trying. And anyways, Alvin requires a little bit of acknowledgement here. It was John Harvey and Paul Limoges, Paul Emery. Marcel Bellomer was one of the first persons to really start a force behind getting a new curling club. And but he just managed to curl a couple of years after we built it. The ladies' club with Frances Santamon and Marge Rintoul at the time did an awful lot of work. And other persons that were involved were Larry Merkley, Gerard Santamon, Bernard Santamon, Tiny Weiss, Joe Burnell, Mike Bourey, Wilkie Garraway, Joe Summers, Connie Maurice, Jake Reimer, and Kitty Perro. These were the people who really, I hope I didn't miss anybody, but these are the major people who helped contribute to building this new curling club.
Sure, a fine group, as I remember them. The new club needed financing. That got into a fairly complicated
Yes.
deal, and I'm aware that the town of Penetanguishene and the curling club entered into some kind of operating agreement.
Yes.
Could you expand upon that?
Well, at the time, we found the cost a little bit much, so Vince, who was a curler himself, made a deal. He was mayor at the time, and talked council into making this deal with the curling club, whereas we would build the curling club and pay all the expenses that would come up, and we would turn over the curling club to the town after it was paid for. Now, we received funds from the Tiny Township, a grant to Tiny Township, a grant to the town of Penetang of $20,000 each. The curling club had roughly $18,000 to $20,000 saved up between the ladies' curling club and the men's curling club. And then we made a loan and a deal with the Bank of Nova Scotia where we would borrow $60,000 from the Bank of Nova Scotia. Now this loan was covered by individual curlers who were guarantors, such as myself and many of the others, at $1,000 to $2,000 apiece. And this worked out quite well. It was another additional $60,000. That the estimated fee from the architect, their fee, and building of the curling club would be around $125,000, an unheard of price in this day and age. But it did. We did build a curling club for $178,000. We went over budget a bit, but it's an incredible amount if you look at it as today's standards. But we raised the other money by bingos and other methods.
Okay. I know that you kind of assume many hats as being president of the club, and you even were involved with the ice making.
Yes.
What kind of challenges did that present?
Well, in those days, we didn't have the money to hire anybody. So the president of the club was the manager of the club, and he had to delegate from there. So we had a nice maker who was with us for a short period of time, but there was nobody else to fill his shoes after he left. So I had to fill those shoes as well. And then Kitty Perro looked after the bar. She did a whale of a job. And now these are unpaid positions. And the ice making was and manager's jobs were gratis. And it was quite a feat.
All volunteer work.
All volunteer work, no matter what. And I was the ice maker, but I had a lot of help. Wilkie Garraway was a great helper in those days, and Larry Merkley, and there was a few who would come down every Friday night, work on the ice, and prepare it for the next week.
There's been an evolution since you've finished curling as far as rule changes, and one of the more key rules that has been instituted into curling, I guess, is the free guard zone. What kind of impact do you think that had on the game as compared to the way you curled or the style of curling you used?
Well, the way we curled was a heavy knockout game, and as soon as the free guard rule came in, then it was a little more challenging. It's turned into more of a draw game. So that's and made the game a lot more interesting.
Sure, spectator friendly.
Yeah, the dead knockout game was just it was a little bit boring at times because it was just a continuous knockout, and some of the curlers were so accurate they were not missing, and so it made it for a boring game.
Right. John, in the last couple of years, there's been talk between the Midland Curling Club and the Penetang Curling Club of potentially joining together. Where do you think the future of the Penetang Curling Club is heading down the road here?
Well, it would be great to have that happen, but I don't foresee it right away, unless one of the clubs are in financial problems. Then they would have to do something, and all the curlers would have to go to Midland, or all the curlers from Midland have to come to Penetang. And it would be nice, but Penetang Curling Club has great ice, is super ice. And the Midland curlers aren't quite ready to come over to Penetang yet, and I don't think the Penetang curlers are ready to go over there. But I think maybe someday you might see it.
Right. One final question, John. You've got an obvious passion for this wonderful game of curling that you've developed over the years. What are some of the events that have impacted you personally over these past years in curling in our community? In other words, what's brought you to enjoy the game as much as you do?
Well, the game itself is fun, but the social end of it is just as much fun. And now, having not curled for a few years, I don't miss the game that much, but I miss the social end of it. I've met a lot of people through curling all over Ontario, and even to this day, they're still friends, and I get invited to visit these people or to functions, retirement functions, something like that type of thing, And so this is the part that you miss, is the social end of it. It's a sad part that I had to give up too, But curling is a great game. It's comparable to chess, and it's a thinking man's game, and you have time to think before you let that rock go. Once you let the rock go, it's a different story. It's gone. But it's a great game. It's a great game.
I couldn't agree more. John, this session's been nothing short of fascinating to me. And having had the opportunity to speak with you about curling, though I know I've curled with you over the years, and it's wonderful to hear the older history of the curling in Penetang. I thank you for enlightening us, certainly about the history of the game in our community and identifying those who've helped make curling what it is today in Penetanguishene. And it's been a great pleasure chatting with you, and I thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. And I'm sure I've missed a lot of names and a lot of things that have happened, but let's hope I covered the major part of it.
I'm sure you did.
Thank you.
John, I understand way back when they were building the place on Water Street that things got altered a little bit, and they changed the walkways on the side, kind of unilaterally, I suppose.
Yeah, that was an accident. The person in charge of construction of the floor didn't measure the distance, the width of the width of the distance of the curling club. So the actual sheets, the 6 sheets, are a few inches out because of this error that happened. You'll find on one side of the curling club the catwalk is a little bit wider than the other, and this is the reason they made a mistake. But it didn't hamper anything. We still had good ice. We had different rules when the rock was touching the 12-foot and touching the bumper at the same time. The rock would still be in play. Right. But if it was touching the bumper and not the circle, it was out of play.
Right.
And it worked out just fine.
And that impacted, I think, when you initially put the ice in every season, you had to be careful.
We had to justify the distance on each sheet, right. You know. But then we had that worked out quite well, and it was all down on paper before we even started.
Interesting.
That was now getting back to the putting in the ice every year. That was quite a chore. We had half the town there, or half the curling club putting in the ice.
Right.
Joe Burnell used to come in with his tractor from the farm, and he had a pressure hose on it, and he would spray the color on the ice, and it was a mess. But because it was such a pressured hose, but it worked out. We did the cleanup after, and everybody pitched in. And I got one thing I have to say for that curling club is the level of the ice is fairly consistent and very good. It was easy ice to make, an easy club to make ice in. Yeah.
And it was good ice.
It was good ice. It was good ice. It was, well, in the beginning, it was a little bit tricky because we had condensation problems.
Exactly.
And it was the roofs were leaking, and there were bumps on the ice. We have to get down to the curling club at 6:30 to play at 7, so we could scrape the bumps off the ice. Right. And that went on for a year or two, and then we put fans in the club, which helped a bit, but it still didn't fully help the condensation. And then Ozzy got a hold of an old dehumidifier, and we put it in there, and it worked quite well. And we didn't have these problems anymore. The problems were minor until now they have a brand new one, which does a great job.
Right.
And I think any building that's structured out of steel, you're going to get this problem. Yeah. With the changing of temperature inside.
Absolutely,
yeah.
The changing of the seasons and.
Yeah, and we didn't have the ice scrapers today that we have today. In the first few years, it was all scraped by hand.
Sure. Yeah, I can remember you doing that.
No equipment at all, but we managed to curl with it with a decent ice.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing that crossed my mind just as we're talking here is there are some pretty big time curlers that came through that club. And I think back, I remember Wally Meisinger hosted a spiel, And he had guys like Paul Savage and
Yes.
even the world champions came through. They were Swedish fellows, I think.
Well,
Ragnar Camp.
Yes, they were up, and we were doing all kinds of promoting to promote curling in Penetang. And Wally was in charge of promotions, and he did a great job. He brought teams in, and he even had his own bonspiel. And on Thursday night we had a men's league, and we used to invite other clubs over. We used to invite Ellenvale, Midland, and we used to have a super Thursday night with a good social evening after the curling. And it's sad to see this gone, but it's a new days, new era.
Yeah. Well, that probably led to what they now call today, on Tuesday nights in Penetang, is the Major League.
Yeah, it was similar.
Yeah.
But I think that the Thursday nights were just jam-packed. You know,
Yeah.
there were no empty sheets.
I think back of the camaraderie that went along with it.
And it was tough curling. And it was that was within the club itself, but then we had our nights for bringing Ellenvale over, and that was always a lot of fun too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, they're a fun
Yeah.
bunch.
Yeah, it was a good time. There's a lot of good stories that you go back to the old days, and I call them the old days. Not that long ago, but
We were chatting just a while back about 8-enders.
oh yeah, there was 2 or 3 8-enders that happened in the club. I lost an 8-ender, not through my own fault, but our team was curling against Jerry Janak, and I had 7 rocks in there, and he had nothing, and he had his last rock, or we had 8 rocks in there, and he has his last rock to come down, and he chose to draw rather than take out. And lo and behold, he made his draw, just hanging on to the outside 12. And that was, I would have never done that. I would have taken a rock out for sure.
Exactly.
I wouldn't want anybody to pin an 8-ender on me.
You'd be stuck with it forever.
That was fun. Getting back to the old curling club at the Mental Health Center, there was a couple of 8-enders that happened up there too. But curling was serious, very, very serious in the old days. And you made mistakes, and you were reprimanded by the old curlers, and there was no fooling around. And it got so tense at times that I remember witnessing a couple of fights out on the ice, and that was almost unheard of, you know. And I remember at one time watching a rock coming down, and I won't name names, but there was a skip holding the broom and watching his rock come down, and the opposition skip has a chance to sweep that rock out of there, but he can't do anything until the rock reaches the tee. So this other skip is sitting down there, but he won't move. He stayed there right until the rock hit the tee, and he just still didn't move that much, so he got cross-checked down on the ice. And as he come down, the broom come around and caught the other skip right in the mouth, and the blood was flying, and there was a fight. And there was blood all over the ice. And that was one of the fights that I saw. And the other one, I just saw it happen very quickly, and there was a couple of, they were swinging, going at it, and my dad and Jumbo were down there separating these 2 guys who were fighting. They're both gone now, but it was something to see. And you don't ever see a fight on the ice today, never.
For sure.
It was very serious.
One thing, as you're talking about that, you twigged me what I don't see at the curling club anymore are the trophies.
Yeah, this is a sad part. Right now, the Sieberling Trophy that used to be played for club championships were turned over to the museum. Why, I don't know, because that thing has been played for since 1932, I believe. And that club has the history of the club on it.
Yeah.
Everybody who's won the club championships had their name on it. And they, for some reason, it just discontinued that, and I thought that was awful.
I agree.
And I'd like to see that trophy come up to the Hall of Fame here, because it has the names of curlers that go back right to 1932. In fact, George Robinson was on it.
Was on it. Yeah. I agree. I don't know what caused the cessation of that. I guess the prizes that you would get at the end of a draw, that's changed dramatically, type of thing. You used to get a little trophy.
Yes.
Now there's no such thing. You might get a package of meat from, M&Ms or something.
Yeah, it's not the same. I think some of these Bonspiels and some of these championships should be recognized a little bit more, and it's not being done.
They're almost historic. I can remember the pea soup Bonspiel, the annual pea soup Bonspiel. It got so big at one time, and they had to run it over 2 weekends.
We used to run it 2 weekends, and the reason why we did run it for 2 weekends is our team went up to the Sloans in Gravenhurst, which is run over 2 weekends.
Right.
And we thought, let's run a Bonspiel over 2 weekends and see if it would work. Well, we filled it up the first year. There was no problem at all. And we used to supply all the pea soup you want to eat and all the bread you want to eat, plus other goodies. And it went over real well. And we used to provide a crest with it, and the winner's a large crest.
Yeah.
And I won that 3 times.
Yes, I remember it well.
And it was a good spiel, a lot of fun, and something like that. I don't know today what's happening with it, if it's still even in existence.
Yeah, I think it is, but it's not near the magnitude. I think
No,
it's just
it needs promotion.
well, absolutely. And,
At one time, the Habitant Pea Soup, the makers of Habitant Pea Soup, supplied all the pea soup for 2 or 3 years,
right?
and we didn't have to cook any.
Yeah.
But we used to get our wives. Ozzy's St. Amand's wife used to do a huge vat, and my wife did some, and Larry Merkley's wife did some. And everybody was providing all this pea soup, and we used to put it in a huge vat on a tripod right in the club, with a little bit of burner, with a burner underneath to keep it hot.
Yeah.
And that was part of the fun of the game.
Yeah. It was kind of like lore.
Yeah.
Ozzy even rigged something up where it was a kind of an electric winch where you could raise and
That's
lower
right.
the buckets.
Yeah.
To adjust the heat. You didn't have to adjust the heat, just had to adjust the bucket.
Yeah, and people would just help themselves with the pea soup.
That's right. Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was, absolutely.
And even the Thursday night, the major league in our club, we used to have a dinner after every Thursday night. We had a dinner of some kind, seafood or spaghetti, something. And Wally Meisinger did pig knuckles one night. It was great.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Yes, times have changed, I think.
Oh yeah.
The curling field. But I mean, things are going to change, that's for sure, and now we have, we've been fortunate enough that we've had Canadian, provincial, and world champions come out of our club, and we're kind of spoiled, really.
Yeah, it's different today. We find that there's, at least I find that there are a lot of seniors retiring in this area, and they have come in and started using the club quite a bit. And I don't find the juniors using the club too much. There's not enough promotion to promote junior curling. Mm-hmm. Mind you, I had junior curling a while back, and I used to look after that. And most of the curlers had left the area after they finished high school, and this was a sad part of it. Mm-hmm. And there are a few that stayed, but this helps promote curling. And today, I don't even know if there's junior curling down there.
I wouldn't know for sure.
But it's sad that it's gone. But they need a lot more promoting, I think, than what they're doing. We used to have Friday night jitneys that at first, it didn't work out very well. Before you know it, man, we couldn't, it was full up. We'd have to refuse people because there was no more room. And it went well for many, many years.
And the jitney was
Sorry, it was Saturday night.
Yeah.
Friday night was mixed curling.
mixed curling.
Yeah.
What were jitneys?
And jitneys were, you come in and you pick up, you pay a fee of maybe $2.50, which provides you with a lunch after. And when you walked in, you picked a tag off the board. You didn't know who the skip was, and this is who you'd end up with. So you never curl, chances are you never curled with your wife, you curled with somebody else.
Right.
And it just made for a good social evening. You got to meet everybody, and it was fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's happening anymore.
I don't believe so. I haven't heard that word in years, frankly.
Yeah, but these are the things that help promote a club. We used to have curling on Saturday nights, these jitneys, and then we have a dance after.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the bars used to do quite well in those days, and which helped pay off the club as well.
Yeah.
And the barkeep was Kitty Perro. She was there 6 days a week, tending bar, sometimes 7.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, we used to have to buy a liquor permit every time we sold liquor. So it would be expensive over a week's time. And 3 years later, we finally got a liquor license, which was tough to get. And I had to thank Peter Sheriff and Ernie Lalone for that. They did all the groundwork, and I got all the laurels for it. But it was a tough thing to get. We went down and faced a judge, and maybe a little different than today. And we had to announce it in the paper before we got the license and see if there would be any
Objections.
objection to the club having a liquor permit. But it didn't happen. We went down, faced the judges, and there was no problem. We got the liquor license. It was nice. The mayor came with me, and Peter Sheriff came with me, and it was good.
The facility was not only just for curling either. Right?
No, we rented it through the summer months. And then we used to have what we call, Wally Meisinger, again, thank you to Wally, had Summerfest. He used to bring a Bavarian band from Kitchener up every year. And we had a massive dance on the dance floor. There'd be thousands of people. And we used to, in fact, back the beer truck up to the big doors, the beer store would let us use their beer truck because there was so many sold, so much sold. There were tons of beer sold, and everybody was given a mug as they came in. Was part of the deal, and everybody drank beer. There was no liquor sold; it was just beer. And we had a beer fest, a summer fest. It was fun, and we made a lot of money. We did quite well with that. And we had shows in there, car shows, boat shows.
Bingos.
The bingos were the items that finally paid off the curling club. And that, I got to thank Joe Summers and Connie Maurice. They worked till the very last $9,000 were paid. The town of Penetanguishene forgave us $9,000, and we paid the $9,000. Our final bill was $18,000, and they forgave us $9,000. So we paid the other $9,000, and the curling club was paid off and turned over to the town. And it was a little bit over budget, but for $178,000, when you look at it now, that included the ice plant as well.
Right.
So
it's amazing.
Today, I don't know if you can get an ice plant for $178,000.
Probably not.
So it's a change of times.
That's for sure.
But a lot of the work with the plumbing was done volunteer. The electrical work was done volunteer. The Bernard Santamon and his crew, I helped with Bernard, put in the plumbing. Paul Emery and his crew, and Tiny Weiss, And we even had the electrical inspector come in helping us get the electrical work. So that went over quite well.
That helps.
Yeah. And Tiny Weiss brought him in because Tiny was a manager of the hydro at the time.
Yeah.
And Tiny was looking after the electrical, Paul Emery. And it was quite interesting. Wally looked after the brickwork. Wally, his original trade is a block layer, bricklayer. So he did all the facade of the curling club and anything that was done in brickwork. Yeah, and getting back to the old curling club, the mental health center, the lounge was never used. I have to bring this up because it was quite exciting. The last bonspiel when they closed the curling club was a massive bonspiel. Everybody wanted to curl because the curling club was closing. They wanted a part of it. And so they were allowed to open the bar for one day. The doctors up there agreed to it,
Went along with
and they curled anyways. So they opened the bar, and the bar was upstairs, pretty rough, but not very clean. But it served its purpose.
served the purpose. Yeah.
And a beer was going for 10 cents, and a shot of rye was going for 10 cents. So it was fun. It was, in fact, Affy Thompson, one of our local lawyers, came up to he was curling, he curled at the time. And he came up to the bar and he bought a drink and he asked, how much? The bartender says, 10 cents. Oh my God. Affy threw a $10 bill on the table, buy everybody around. So that was funny. Yeah, and
Gave it a royal send-off.
they made a mistake of giving prizes before the bonspiel was over to some of the first draw. And one of the prizes was a ring of bologna, a huge piece of bologna. And they were starting to eat this bologna, and there was bologna all over the ice. And it was a huge party, and it was a successful party. A little damaging at times, but some of the people got hurt because of excessive drinking, but it was fun.
It was all good fun. Interesting.
In those days, too, even when they come up to the arena here, brooms were supplied. And it was funny, I have a photo at home that the curling brooms were stuck in the wire mesh that the ice makers would put on the brooms out for use. Some people own their own broom, like I did, but most of them did not, and would just pick a broom out of the slot, out of the screen. The brooms are stuck in the screen. It was pretty neat. And that's when the brooms started to change, when we moved up to this club. The very first brooms, I would say, started the year before we moved up here. And the old brooms started to disappear. Yeah.
Well, they sure did revolutionize, if you might say, over the years, because I remember beginning with the straw brooms, the little beaver and the blackjacks and those type of straw brooms, going to the synthetics, and there are many various forms of those. The rink rats, for example. And,
Yeah.
our team used, and I believe your team did as well, they were called super lights.
They were fantastic brooms. They wouldn't stand up. That's the problem.
They wouldn't take the pounding.
They were ladies. They were meant for ladies curling. They were nylon, and I was amazed. Like our team used the super light or the ladies curl masters broom, and it was an amazing broom because I can still recall when I'd yell sweep. And the three of them would be on their brooms. I would actually see that rock jump, and you could see a pattern in the ice. Mm-hmm. Not like today. You don't see those patterns in the ice. I still feel that it was the best broom that was ever invented, but they didn't stand up. You used to break the backs on those brooms. Mike Brewery used to always complain uh, that he was buying too many brooms. They were fun days. Yeah. There were a lot of interesting things that happened here in this club while we were here. And I remember one night after curling, there was such a bad storm that I slept in the lounge overnight. Morris Belil and I closed the bar. It was late at night, and it was horrible. And you couldn't move your car. It was just too much snow. So we just had another drink and had to sleep on the couch up in the lounge. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, your team did very well too, Bob. You guys won district in Colts. And,
Yeah, we were pretty successful there,
you did
actually.
quite well in Colts, yeah. And you've won a lot of spiels, and you did well.
Yeah, we got up against in Colts the year after that we had won it. We ran up against a young hotshot by the name of Russ Howard. And that was his beginning, really. He was curling out of Midland, of course, with Jimmy Clark and a couple other fellas. And I remember Dennis on our team, Dennis O'Leary, saying to me, he picked out Russ pretty quickly. He said, "This guy's a little bit something. He's the real deal," type of thing. And from then on, I mean, the rest is in the books, you know.
I was leaving just as Russ was coming in, and I played one game against him, and we beat him. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, mainly to their own fault on that team, they were arguing once with one another, and they were losing sight of the game. And we were shooting hot that day, and
Yeah.
so it was the only time I met Russ. Yeah.
The young team, young guys just starting out, and they hadn't learned that part of the game yet, probably, you know.
I curled at a lot of spiels with Russ being in that spiel, but never against him. It was usually on a different draw. But that was the only time we curled against him. I think it was in the pea soup here in Penetang.
Obviously, done marvelously over the years. I mean, both of the brothers are in the Hall of Fame here, and three of their teams, because they won with three various teams. We had a little bit of a dilemma when we would receive a nomination for Glenn, period. And the more we discussed it, the more we realized that you know
it takes four people to win a game.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we realized that you had three groups of four people.
That's right.
One, you know, so they all came in the same year, which was nice. It was.
Yeah.
You know, and of course, you know, Larry Merkley, who curled with you, was a key factor with those guys over the years. And,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And, more importantly than curling, I think Larry's role as the fifth man, he was such a genius. I found at reading the ice and reading the rocks.
He was a real student of the game.
He was one of the first guys that started matching rocks. You know, I'd never seen that before.
Yeah. Yeah, that was another thing. The rocks at the mental health center. It was a real mismatch. We curled, like the ice at the mental health center, of course, was natural ice. And when we get down to the end of March, you would be lucky to finish the year off. And I remember one year in the playoffs, we were curling and there was actually water on the ice. And we were curling, it was a 100-watt light bulb at each end of the sheet of ice, because with the other lights were melting the ice. So I still remember those rocks. There were rocks 155 pounds, 55 pounds, 55-pound rocks, and actually 35-pound rocks. They had 35 to 55-pound rocks. That's quite a variance.
right.
And the shape of the rocks, too. Some of them would be flat and wide, others be narrow and like a pear. And I remember curling in the water in that final game. I think I was curling for my dad, and we were curling against Larry McDonald and Ray McDonald. And we couldn't get the rocks down. The sweeping was to get the water out of the way so we could get the rocks down. And we managed to finish the game, and everybody was soaking wet. And I think the major curler in that game was John Reynolds. He used those pear-shaped rocks, and that was all that was left for him to use. And the rocks, I was using 55 pounders, but I couldn't get the rock down there. We thought that by using the heavy rocks, you could get them down there better, but you couldn't. It was worse. And he was using the light rocks. I think there was 37 pounds, and he was the only one that could get them down there decently. And because of him, we won that game.
Wow.
And it was the club championships. Again, on the Seawerling Trophy, we took there was no place we could have a drink after the game, so we went down to the Commodore. And when we left the Commodore, we weren't there very long. We went home, and the next day we were looking for the trophy. Somebody had left it in the snowbank. The guys at the manager of the Commodore found it and took it in, and he was waiting for us to come back for it. So everybody thought everybody else had the trophy, but so we had a party with it. We filled it with champagne, and a couple of days later, and had champagne out of it. There was a lot of booze that came out of that trophy over the years, and that's why I find it so sad. You know, it was a good trophy that we should recognize, and it's gone. Hopefully, the museum would turn it over here to the Hall of Fame.
Probably. I think we're looking into things like that. Yeah, there's stuff down there that probably belong up here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know, you talk about rocks. I can remember my father who curled up at the mental health center.
Yes, I remember that.
He
had a red jacket.
Oh.
Yeah, a red coat. He had one like that. Like Big Greg had one like that. There was a number. Len O'Leary's had one like that. They all had this beautiful red jacket. You know?
But I guess it was before they had bins to store their rocks, and they literally had to carry their rocks up Church Street to get to
Oh boy!
bring them with them. They'd store them at home. And I know when the rocks became available, I know when I was working at the mental health center during my working career, what they did, they're cleaning out the basements, and that's where the rocks ended up, at the basements of Oak Ridge. And they just put them out all on the lawn, and anybody that wanted rocks could take them because they were going home. And that's where they went.
I was very sad over that because I was told about it, but told about it late.
Yeah.
And I went up to get my dad's rocks,
Yes.
and they were true 40-pound rocks, which they are using today. And when I got there, they were gone.
Yeah.
And I don't know whatever happened to them because
Somebody's got them
I
somewhere.
would love to have them. I have one rock. They're with my son. My son Tom used to have it.
Right.
It was Boyd Hollister's rock.
Oh, there's a
Yeah.
name.
Yeah, he had his own rocks.
Yeah.
So I have one of Boyd Hollister's. My daughter-in-law has it now.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
I managed to get a couple, and the two I got were Mr. Art McKee and Mr. Jan Ulrichsen. I've got them both in my garage.
Well, when Penetang won the junior curling championships back in, I can't remember the date now, 1928, I think it was.
Back then, yeah.
Yeah, and Jan Ulrichsen was on that team, and his brother, but I can't remember the names of the other curlers who were on that team. But we did find out that Jan and his brother were on that team.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but even in those days, in 1928, they would have to have taken their rocks with them, go to Toronto, and play that off in Toronto.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an incredible feat in those days.
Well, I guess.
Yeah. But when they left town, a lot of them would have to go. They went curling by train loaded the trains with their rocks. And Jumbo Jibbo was telling me this. I'm not sure if my dad ever did that, but it was long before. And George Robinson was involved in that kind of thing. And they would go curling all over Ontario by train. And the rocks would be on a flat car outside of the train because they had to keep the rocks cold. If you brought in warm rocks, they would not work.
That's right.
They had to keep them cold. Yeah. It must have been interesting. But when they went to these places, they were always provided with food. Like my dad said they used to go curling in Ellenvale, and they always had a chicken stew going steady in Ellenvale. And he did tell me what they had here in Penetang, but I can't remember. The curling club, the curling club that was first curling club here in Penetang was built where the curling club is built now. And it was built by Mr. McGibbon, who owned the McGibbon Lumber Company, and he loved to curl. So he had 2 sheets of ice built there. And after that fell apart, the next curling club was built where the post office is today. Hattie Corbo had photographs of it, and I don't know what happened to the photographs. I'd just love to get my hands on them. Of that curling club. It was an old ramshackle curling club, 2 sheets of ice. And after that fell apart, it was moved to Hack Osborne's arena. Hack built an arena for hockey, and adjoining it was a curling club. But the ice was never any good. It was due to the fact that it had a poor base. Right. It was sawdust and something else, and it didn't work very well. So they had to abandon that and went to the Ontario Hospital Curling Club. Their base was sawdust, and it worked quite well.
Right. Hack Osborne's arena, that's where the beer store is today.
That's where the beer store is today. The big arena, it burnt down. I remember seeing it burn.
Yeah, we've got photographs of that here.
Yeah, I remember seeing all the rocks strewn around the old curling club, on the curling club side of it. And I used to go over there after playing hockey, and I used to just play in there.
Sure.
And it was too bad that didn't work out. It just didn't. But so curling has evolved quite a few years here in the town of Penetanguishene.